Sitting alone in the car had started by fumbling through in the cassettes in the glove box, but then decided not to put on any music. Instead, he listened for the echo of what he had felt just now. Soon the headlamps of the other two cars had vanished, and only the light from his own lamps lit up the road ahead, making a silhouette. There was snow on every branch of every spruce. The clouds still hung heavy in the skies, grey-black, swallowing the light from the moon and the stars. The road twisted and turned for a while through the winter forest. The young man drove mechanically. He was deep in thought, lost in the view before him. He couldn't imagine a finer sight than this, how he loved the forest and winter. He fished around with his left hand in the pockets of his black leather jacket for a cigarette, put it between his lips and waited for the dashboard lighter to click. He drew it from his socket, held the red glowing coil to the cigarette and inhaled its heat, keeping one eye on the road, breathed in the smoke. He wound the window down. It had begun to snow again, gently, but that didn't bother him. Nor did the cold that came in with it. Small, fine flakes of snow drifted through the light from the headlamps. A few flakes danced into the car from outside, tumbled through the air. The smoke then settled to melt on his leather jacket and on his long, light brown hair, leaving spots of water behind them. Now the road began to drop more steeply, winding downward to the valley in tight curves and through the tunnels. At one point the road emerged from the forest for a while onto the mountainside, offering another view down the fjord, where ice floated in the black water, where the stiff cliff face was white with snow. The road led through another tunnel and curved back into the forest, widening so that he could look up between the tall trees to the night sky, where a wild wind silently drove bizarre cloud formations before it, with the moon visible between them every now and again. The young man felt a sense of awe well up within him at the sight. It was not unwelcome feeling, for he loved the forests, revered them even, but it surprised him, for he had driven this way many times, more often than he could count. At that moment his thoughts were interrupted when the car suddenly gave up. The engine stalled, the indicator lights went out, the headlights, everything but the side lights. The car rolled on for a few meters more and then stopped. Shit. The alternator had given up good and for all. He hammered at the steering wheel, flung the door open, got out and opened the bonnet. He glared angrily at the car's innards, tugged at a few cables and connections, and then gave up, swearing as he slammed the bonnet closed. Shit. He leans against the car for a moment, then takes his mobile phone out of his pocket. A harsh, light blue light pierces the darkness and lights up his face. The face of a dreamer, the face of a warrior. He's got the emergency services number saved, but he can't get a connection. Instead of the dial tone, all he hears is an ugly trilling beat, then silence again. 3 tries, and then he calls another number. His sister lives nearest here. He can't reach her either. The phone just tells him there's no reception. One more try, his drummer, then his bassist, then his brother. No use. In a rage, he ends up hurling the phone away, so far that he can barely hear it, lands somewhere between the trees where the snow swallows it up. He howls with rage again, shouting into the forest, kicks the car, then slowly he calms down and realizes how cold he is. At first he wants to go and look for the phone, but he hesitates. Actually, I hate the thing. He lifts his head and looks at the dark forest, the gleaming snow, feels cold gnawing at his fingers. Everything around him looks untouched, even vulnerable, especially the blanket of snow, so soft and inviting. He loves snow in the winter cold, never hurries to get back home. The phone can stay where it is. It wasn't far now to the next village, down there in the bay of the fjord. Not really a village even, 4 houses and a filling station. He gets his rucksack from the boot, scarf, hat and gloves, and the torch. The clouds had scattered a little in the meantime. The moon was giving plenty of light. It was glorious to feel the snow under his boots, first yielding as his foot sank in and then crunching as the heavy sole pressed down. He reckoned he would need about an hour to reach the village. When he breathed out, he could see his breath rising as white clouds. It had been cold these last few weeks, a still, clear cold, so that for a long time no snow could fall. Instead, a glittering white frost had covered all the trees, the meadows and the rooftops, and great spreading frost flowers had blossomed on the last single-paned windows left in his parents' house. The lakes all around had long frozen over, snarling and snapping at night as the ice grew thicker. When he was a boy, he had always used to run out first thing in the morning to go skating on the gleaming black ice. The temperature had gone up a little in the last couple of days, and the sky had gathered its heavy grey clouds that shed their load, so that now there was a thick blanket of snow over everything. He stoops down as he walks along, and grabs 2 big handfuls of snow and tries to make a snowball. But the snow's too cold, it's powdery and freezing, won't keep its shape. The white crystals trickle through his fingers and back to the ground. He stands still and looks around. He's come so far, but by now he can't see the car. Then he hesitates again. He can see the forest around himself, sense it, lit by moonlight and plunged in darkness. And then there's something else in that darkness. A presence, huge and incomprehensible, but he doesn't feel threatened. He doesn't even think he's been noticed. Perhaps it hasn't spotted him yet.
Er schüttelte den Gedanken ab und konzentrierte sich wieder auf den mondhellen Weg. Man vergaß so leicht, wie hell Mondlicht sein konnte, wenn man die Nächte stets in kränklichem Kunstlicht verbrachte. Eine zarte Freude erfasste ihn bei diesem Gedanken, als hätte er etwas lang Vermisstes wiedergefunden. Der junge Mann kann kaum glauben, wie wenig Angst in die Dunkelheit jetzt noch macht. Denn er weiß genau, dass er bei all seiner Sehnsucht die gleiche Furcht in sich trägt wie alle anderen. Noch hat er es nicht geschafft, diesen Teil von sich abzutöten oder wenigstens zu ignorieren, so sehr er es auch versucht hat. Wenn er zur Hütte fuhr, nachts den Wald durchquerte, konnte er es nie ganz verhindern, sein Auto als Schutz gegen das Draußen, als sichere Kapsel in der Wildnis wahrzunehmen, die die Grenze markierte zwischen Mensch und Natur. Aber wie sehr er sich gleichzeitig auf die andere Seite dieser Grenze wünschte. Denn er verehrte die Natur und ihre Unerbittlichkeit und er hasste die Menschen, so gut er konnte, alle, mit wenigen Ausnahmen. Seit er sich erinnern konnte, war er von einem tiefen, aber ungerichteten Sehnen erfüllt gewesen, danach ein wirklicher Teil dessen zu sein, was er um sich sah, und nicht nur ein Fremdkörper, dessen Schritt die Tiere verjagten. Ihre Musik war Ausdruck dieses Wunsches, jene Grenze zu sprengen. Kälte und Rausche für Eis und Schneefall, Monotonie für den ewigen Winter, Lautstärke und extreme Raserei für das Überwältigende, Unfassbare, Bösartigkeit für den Schrecken, den das Gefühl der eigenen Winzigkeit und Abgetrenntheit verursachte, Wildheit und Brutalität für die Stärke, an der sie selbst gerne teilhätten.
Spruce and firs fringed the road, along with spindly birches, and between them the raw rock broke out, the bedrock that made up most of the land hereabouts. The stone only allowed a little soil to build up on its back, crumbs of earth in the cracks and fissures where something could grow. The trees seemed to have sunk their roots deep into this inhospitable ground. The land here was not made for mankind. How he hated mankind. Mankind. Man could not survive on his own. Man was a naked beast trapped by his dull, weak senses, more vulnerable even than a whelp, more helpless. Certainly man's mind helped him to make up for many faults, for the way his body failed him, even to make art and music. But this same mind cut mankind off from the rest. Every other thing had its place in the world, only man did not. Man had to live everywhere and nowhere, cast out, rejected. But wherever he was, over and over again, he hurt the world, forced it to his will, to yield to his needs. He came with fire and machines and left ashes and poison behind. But here, where the land showed its hard, gleaming bones, it was clear that mankind was only allowed for a while. A whisper in the darkness, temptation and damnation. The slope was on his left now, and the dense rows of trees opened out to give a clear view. It seemed to him that he could see the whole forest by moonlight tonight, that he knew every path and road through the blue-black shadows of the trees, through the dreary thickets of spruce, pine, scattered birches and tangled undergrowth. He knew that the road back to the hut was behind him, and the next village was ahead, downhill where the locals twitched in their webs. They had spun from envy, rumours and slander. He hated the thought that he would have to go down there to make a phone call to get home. As it was, he chose to use the time to take a detour down the slope, to delay his arrival as long as he could. The path he has been climbing for a while already. Now he feels the climb in his legs, but he's not tired yet. He's a long way from worn out. He's happy to be walking through the forest as though he belonged here, as though as part of this blue, black and white world around him, where he fitted so well with his ice-cold thoughts and his burning hatred of everything he sees as false. A little later the road curved around the side of a huge rock that loomed out over the cliff face above man struck off the road to the right and climbed down the slope, holding onto the tree stumps and shrubs to clamber up atop the rock. The snow crunched as it compacted under his shoes, becoming slippery and making the climb harder. A couple of times he had to hurry to grab hold of the next branch if he was not to go slithering back down. At last he reached the top, stood proudly there on the smooth stone like a conqueror, and gazed out across the winter forest and then up to the sky. He saw the forest lying below him, a solid sea of snow and hoarfrost, with the countless firs thrust upwards like spear points, stacked in an armory, gleaming black and white in the starlight under the night sky. While up above the clouds scurried silently, showing the moon as they came and went. Odd how fast the sky changes tonight, with the clouds racing